Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Ali, and I am in charge of webinars here at Barracuda. Thanks so much for joining us today for our webinar, Malicious QR Codes, Phishing as a Service, and more, new capabilities to combat the latest threats. Today, we have with us Alessia Klepchuk, and she is our Director of Product Marketing, and Prep, who is a product management manager. Excuse me for that one. All right, before I let them take away the show, I do have a couple of housekeeping items for you. Just a reminder, this webinar is recorded. You will receive a copy of the recording either later today or tomorrow morning. And we also encourage audience participation. So if you have anything that you'd like that they're hearing, you can give them a clap, you can give them a thumbs up, you can cry, you can heart, whatever you feel. It helps us get a pulse on where you are. And we are also live. So if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A section. It should be a box with a question mark in the middle of it at the bottom of your screen. Put them there. We will do our best to answer them. And that is all from me. I will go ahead and turn it back over to you, Alessia and Fred.
Thank you, Ali. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to be talking about the latest trends in email security and specifically focusing on phishing as a service, QR codes, and a lot more. So all of the latest threats and trends that we are seeing. And in addition to that, we're not going to leave you with just information about what's out there, but we will talk about some capability strategies, some tools that we have at Barracuda to help you combat those threats. So let's dive right in. So email today still remains the #1 threat vector, and it's one of the most accessible tools for hackers and cybercriminals to use to penetrate your organizations, to get in touch with your users. They are still using it a lot for phishing attacks, for malware attacks, spamming. 25% of emails that we see being kind of sent to our customers' inboxes are either malicious or unwanted. So 1 in 4 emails that is sent to organizations shouldn't be sent to them. And despite the advances in security, attackers are really adapting really quick. And we'll look at some of the most difficult to detect threats, some of the newest tactics in the coming minutes. And we're also seeing a very dramatic increase in the volume of the attacks, and that's pretty easy for hackers and cybercriminals to do with the rise of AI, generative AI specifically, and sophistication of the attacks, email-based attacks is also increasing. So let's take a look if we can keep up. In 2025, what we're seeing is a real shift and kind of almost like a new face of email attacks and phishing attacks in particular. They have really evolved. We're seeing a lot of AI-powered phishing campaigns that are being launched at a very large scale, making it harder to distinguish the real attacks from the fake ones. Attackers are also abusing trusted cloud services. They use dynamic infrastructures. They all trying to harvest credentials. Like this is a #1 reason for phishing attacks that we're seeing. They're looking for credentials and login information, and they're using increasingly sophisticated techniques. One of the other tactics that we're seeing is the multi-channel or multi-path types of attacks, which means that the threats can come from anywhere. They can come from email, they can come from SMS messages, collaboration tools. They can also jump from one email attack, from one channel to the other. They might start with the email, and then you'll use your phone to scan the QR code, and then you get an SMS message. So we're seeing like a combination of channels being used in the same kind of attack. And this ever-evolving complex landscape does require a multi-layered defense strategy, which we will look at. But let's start by looking at phishing as a service. Phishing as a service are the platforms that made phishing accessible for cybercriminals. Anybody can launch phishing campaigns. You don't require a lot of technical skills. These platforms are often subscription-based. They have multiple pre-built templates for cyber criminals to use. They have automated deliveries and at times even customer support for attackers. We are really seeing phishing as a service at scale, and it's growing over the past couple of years. And this is what's allowed that phishing attacks to really scale up. Because it is provides this lower barrier to entry and kind of sense of anonymity with the phishing attacks associated with the phishing as a service. It's kind of fueled this huge surge of phishing as a service kits being available out there. And in fact, we're seeing around 65% of all phishing attacks today being part of those phishing as a service kits. Some of the most popular ones are Tycoon 2FA, Evil Proxy, Mamba 2FA, Sneaky 2FA, and then there's a kind of a long tail of other kits that are available there. But Prab, you, I know, have a lot more details on what these are and some examples. So why don't you explain a little bit more detail?
Yeah, sure. Let's dive into it. And Lucia, thank you. That was a great introduction. So before I talk about how some of these phishing as a service platforms, or PhaaS as we call them, work, I actually wanted to start off with a story, right? So in 2021, we saw this huge platform lab host that came into existence. And it became so big that it was actually being used by nearly 10,000 cyber criminals. So you can imagine, right? Like, so this platform had access to 42,000 phishing domains. Many of them were actually compromised, and they were being stored to launch phishing attacks. These attacks, the type of emails that were being sent out and the phishing web pages that were accessible actually looked like real legitimate organizations, especially banks and financial institutions. Based on the reports I've seen, you could actually launch phishing attacks to impersonate over 200 legitimate organizations. So, if, let's say, you were targeting somebody's customer, you could actually launch your phishing content just by clicking on a button to make it look like it's coming in from that specific domain. It has the same look and feel as their actual website and their brand. So it was really sophisticated. But beyond just providing fake login pages, LabHost actually allowed infrastructure support as well, right? So Alicia talked about, having support as well provided through these platforms that are helping cyber criminals launch advanced attacks such as bypassing 2FA. So really sophisticated stuff. Finally, FBI got involved, and in 2024, they shut down the platform. But by the time they were actually shut down, LabHost was actually hosting 1 million credentials and 500,000 credit cards, all of which had been harvested through phishing attacks. So, this is the type of scale we are looking at when we discuss PhaaS platforms. And these platforms are, way more sophisticated than they were ever before, right? So they're not just providing, phishing content. They're not just providing you ability to host phishing web pages. They provide full infrastructure configuration and support. Along with that, they have something called adversary in the middle proxy connection. So, these platforms kick in, and anytime you have somebody scan a QR code or a 2FA request goes out, they can actually intercept a lot of these type of requests. They also provide ability to launch smishing. You can store credentials, you can store credit card information to then launch further phishing attacks, right? And this is why, like, these type of PhaaS kits are so dangerous today. They have really low barrier to entry. Nobody needs to write any code. It's all zero code. They're really scalable. Attackers can launch thousands of campaigns simultaneously, right? They don't even need to worry about rate limiting. All of that is done through these platforms today. And the biggest benefit to cyber criminals is that their identity remains anonymous. All of this is happening through legitimate cloud service providers, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, how they actually are being used by attackers today. And all of these provide customization as well. So you can really tailor your phishing attack to specific brands, specific regions, and even mimic certain user behaviors. So really sophisticated. We've talked a lot about like the type of capabilities they provide. So I'm not going to go into the details of that, but let's look at some real world examples of these phishing as a platform services, right? So Tycoon, this was something on Alicia's slide when she talked about the number of phishing campaigns being launched from these type of platforms. So Tycoon has actually been in the news quite a lot lately. Barracuda actually published a very detailed report on a large-scale phishing attack that we stopped last month. This is on our corporate blog. Highly recommend that you look it up, read the type of like techniques that were part of this. There's also a lot of like advisories out there that talk about like how to actually remain protected against these type of attacks. So what happened in September was cybersecurity researchers uncovered that Tycoon phishing kit was not just able to generate fake emails and fake login pages. Um, the kit actually empowered attackers to hide malicious links behind legitimate looking buttons, HTML code, and QR codes. We'll get into more details. I've got a slide just to talk about like, break this down a little bit more. But what was actually like really interesting was that when you have CAPTCHA involved, typically that tells you actually this is legitimate, right? Like this is actually asking me to like click on something to verify this is me and not some bot. But this kit actually leverages CAPTCHA to evade detection and like make it look really legitimate. And then, when you proceed with CAPTCHA, there you go. Your, users are now entering credentials and they are being just given away to attackers, right? So like a lot of like sophisticated advanced techniques which are happening there. Barracuda PhaaS 3.0 has also been in the news quite a lot lately. I've got the screenshot just showing the type of like, massive breaches that are happening. And then lastly, what you see on the right-hand side is just, one GitHub repo, but there's so many other open source initiatives out there that are actually helping cyber criminals launch more and more attacks, right? So Warm GPT came into existence about a year ago. And since then, it has actually been forked so many times. And this has allowed attackers to like, create more and more advanced type of attacks, right? You can see, this project alone has been forked 135 times. So a lot of activity there. And again, this is just one of those initiatives. There are many more out there in the market. Let's break it down a little bit more. This is an actual attack campaign that we stopped, which was leveraging Tycoon PhaaS kit. This looks really legitimate, but in the background, it's actually using invisible spaces in the email body and also the URL. There were a lot of odd characters throughout the email content within the HTML and also within the URL. So this was designed very carefully to evade detection. This specific example also had a CAPTCHA code, which I will like walk you through in the next slide. But what's interesting is that previously a lot of these type of campaigns were targeting Microsoft 365 users, but we've actually seen these attacks now also start to go after Google Workspace customers. So the type of login pages that we are seeing recently look and behave just like a actual Google login. Very advanced stuff, very sophisticated, but also very interesting, right? This is an example, actually multiple examples of the fake CAPTCHA. You can see, there are multiple variations of the CAPTCHA code, right? So based on the type of campaign, the type of region you're targeting, you can actually add CAPTCHA, which looks and acts differently, right? And this is not just an image. These are very interactive and they look very similar to real CAPTCHA codes today that we see. And another like interesting thing is like you see the mention of Cloudflare, right? Like when you see Cloudflare logo, like you already know that this is hosting so many of the web content and the the type of services that cloud native companies need to depend on. But when you see Cloudflare logo on something, it tells you like this should be okay. But then attackers are also, they understand how humans actually interact and they want to mimic a lot of like our own actions and the way we think. So a lot of interesting stuff to share. But let's talk about QR code attacks, right? Like what these are, how they are used, and then we'll break this down as well.
Yeah, QR code attacks are very common attack vector, and a lot of the time they are used as part of the phishing. Attackers are using them to deliver links and malware. So, and the reason why it's so popular among the attackers, because it's so popular in our day-to-day lives. So, QR codes today are everywhere. They're used for Wi-Fi access, for payments, for various product packaging, file sharing. They are everywhere. We are really, really used to scanning QR codes. Their versatility makes it very attractive to businesses, makes it very attractive to us, but it also makes it very attractive to attackers. The more we use QR codes, the more opportunities attackers have to use them too. And they do. They exploit them a lot. Attackers spoof or clone QR codes that could lead users to malicious websites, usually phishing websites, looking to steal the credentials. We see a lot of malicious QR codes that could infect devices with malware or track user activity. We are seeing the rise of quishing that refers to really phishing attacks. They use QR codes, often used to capture that sensitive data, logins. So users often do trust QR codes, and they trust them also more than links. And this could be because we've spent a lot of time training our users to recognize malicious links, and now we need to put just as much effort into training them to be wary of QR codes, and that's what makes them particularly dangerous. What we are seeing a lot of also is the use of QR codes within the attachments. So the malicious QR codes been around for a couple of years now, and we've got pretty good at detecting them. So just as it always happens, attackers and cybercriminals have evolved, and they started to try to hide the way that they're using QR codes. And we're seeing a lot of QR codes hidden within PDF files, hidden within Microsoft 365 documents like Word documents. So around 68% of all malicious PDFs are malicious because they have a malicious QR code inserted into them, and 83% of malicious Microsoft 365 files that we have seen also had a malicious QR codes. So you can find them in email body, you can find them within links, attachments. There is a lot of different ways to use it, and perhaps there are some real tricks that cyber criminals are starting to use with QR codes, right?
Right, 100%. Yeah, so actually just build on top of the story that I was presenting earlier, like why PhaaS kits are really making phishing, happen at scale just at a click of a button, right? So this is another attack example that we saw. This specific phishing as a service kit actually originated from Australia, Gabagol, and this was actually designed to leverage Cloudflare, R2 storage service, right? This is a legitimate service that is trusted by many businesses and organizations to safeguard their content. But Gabagol actually utilize Cloudflare's R2 storage service to actually host malicious payloads and phishing pages. So very sophisticated. Cloudflare, we know, this is one of the largest cloud infrastructure providers available out there today. But attackers actually leveraging Cloudflare allowed them to normalize their own malicious web traffic with normal web traffic, right? So it would become really hard for even the most advanced products out there to separate out legitimate versus malicious content just used on like stats models and things like that. And also, since a lot of this content was hosted on legitimate service, this allowed the emails to also pass all the standard security checks like SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. It did not survive for too long, as you can imagine. Cloudflare, is actually really good in terms of like stopping this type of content. But even like, if, this kit is able to leverage like these type of legitimate service providers for a short time, that can have some severe consequences for many organizations out there. So Alicia talked about, about this specific example. So in this case, right, you see a QR code, but actually it's actually like it was very sophisticatedly designed. This code was a split QR code. So when email scanners would go through this image, they will see two harmless images instead of a single malicious QR code. But when somebody actually clicks on, or when somebody scans this through their phone, this actually then loads malicious content. So very, advanced, very well thought out. And this kit specifically targeted government and academic institutions. So just wanted to say, right, like these are not just like targeting, tech companies. They're not just targeting banks and financial institutes. They're also going after government and academic institutions. This is another example from Tycoon 2FA PhaaS. Basically, this QR code included another legitimate QR code embedded within it, right? So you scan it, it will open a page, then you scan another QR code, and then it takes you to a malicious website. In this case, we saw the content was actually hosted on Google. So again, Google is known to be very legitimate, provides a lot of value to all of us today. But then, we see many of the phishing content leveraging different services that are available through Google. So let's talk. Yeah, Lucy, I'll give it over to you.
Yeah, let's talk about why is it traditional defenses that do not work for the QR codes specifically, just taking QR codes as an example. This is an example of a QR code attack. It's seems to impersonate probably an HR department, some 401k policy overview scan with your phone. The problem number one, this is an image-based attacks, and the traditional gateways, email gateways, will look at for text. They will scan text. Some of them might use various language processing components to try to figure out if this has malicious intent. They will look at links. They will look at attachments. But very often, scanning images is difficult. The second is that it is a sophisticated phishing attacks, and it's very it kind of has this dynamic content that very often redirects and makes very hard to detect this attack. So it will redirect multiple times before it reaches its final destinations. And QR codes also designed to disguise this, the true URL. You can just hover over the QR codes to see where exactly it's going to point. There is a human factor, and we talked about that. Users actually trust QR codes way more than they trust traditional links. It lacks the preview for them as well, so they're more likely to do something about this. And then finally, it's an indirect threat. Like we talked about, this cross-platform attacks there, and this particular one is designed to target mobile devices rather than your desktop or your laptop. So by scanning QR code, very often users will do that with their personal devices that will take the attack outside of your organization's security perimeter, and you'll have very little, probably no visibility at all as to what happens after they scan this QR code. So what do you do? Well, this kind of attacks, you do need machine learning and AI to be able to detect this attack. So the multimodal type of AI will be able to scan images to identify malicious intent within images, and it works equally well on text files, images, sometimes even audio and video as well. You can also you are more likely to be successful at identifying those sophisticated phishing attacks. So you can use the URL sandboxing for threat detection and follow the million directs that these links will take you on before you reach the final destination, and you can analyze the malicious intent of that website. The human factor can be addressed by supplementing with security awareness training and human risk management, providing users with points in time training material. So you have machine learning components that understand that this user is a high risk user. We need to train the map on this specific case and the specific use cases, and provide necessary training materials and guidance at the right time to the right users. And then finally, you want to make sure that you have an account takeover protection in place and you protect your access. If the worst happens and your users have disclosed their credentials and attackers are inside your environment, you want to make sure that you have necessary tools and remediation in place to be able to identify that insider threats and remediate it as quickly as possible. All right, we have a first poll question for you. This one has to do with the QR code. So we're interested whether or not you or your organization encountered phishing attacks that uses QR codes in the last 12 months. You might have encountered it multiple times. It's something you see all the time, once. Maybe you haven't seen one or you're not sure. Please select one response here. What's your experience with QR phishing attacks over the past month?
It's really
Got you.
interesting how like phishing has become a thing lately, right? Over the last like year, 2 years. Like we knew about phishing, then smishing, then wishing. Now it's phishing. It's all over.
Yes, a lot of issues. Hopefully we're done. All right, so 70% of you say that you have not seen a QR code phishing attacks. Well, hopefully that's because you have Barracuda and we're blocking all of them. But it could also be something that it is a very rare type of attack. There aren't that many of them out there, but they are incredibly successful. Prab, what do you think of these results?
Makes sense to me. I think you're absolutely right. They are very targeted. They're not just being sent to random people. So that totally makes sense. But I think,
Yeah.
with emergence of like large language models, like actually I was doing this test just a few days ago. I asked my co-pilot, can you take this link and, generate 10 different variations of QR code? And actually it did that out of the box, right? So it's only a matter of time before they become more accessible. Today, you have to generate QR codes. I know a lot of the PhaaS kits actually make it accessible, but over time, it's just matter of time actually before they become more widely used. Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about multi-path attacks, what these attacks are. Alicia actually kind of already talked about them earlier when we kicked off this presentation. But essentially what happens is with multi-path attacks, you have multiple attack vectors at play here, right? So for example, traditionally you would have, an email that goes out with a QR code. Somebody scans the QR code with their mobile device. It then takes them to a phishing website. In many cases, a lot of these today look like they are legitimate web services. And a lot of them are also, what's interesting is like, we've seen phishing websites which are impersonating Microsoft, and they are actually also hosted on Microsoft URLs. And lately, we've also been seeing the same with Google as well, right? So, you have a 2FA that goes out, then, there's credential theft, and then that leads to some cloud app compromise. In many cases, attackers are targeting Microsoft credentials and also more and more Google today. So this is traditionally what multipath attacks have looked like. I'm sure like many of you might have seen them. We've talked about a few of these examples in the past with the lab host and the Tycon 2FA phishing kit. But with new technology, right, with AI agents, agentic AI, large language models being so readily available, not just to all of us to enhance our productivity, but also to enhance the skill set of attackers, there's just so much more that is possible today, right? You're not just talking about a simple QR code that goes to a mobile device. Now, when you open a phishing site from your mobile device, there might be like a chat bot there. You might, somebody might ask a question, legitimate question. If this is your banking website, they might, one of your users might end up actually asking a question. And then, there could be a supply chain breach just based on that, right? There might be some IoT type device hijacking that happens. There's so much more happening today. And we'll probably need to have like another webinar just to talk about like, how agentic AI is leading so many attacks today. It just like really, really scary, right? Like, and there's so much to watch in this space. I'm really incredibly appreciative of the technology that's available, but at the same time, it does make me afraid of the type of attacks that are going to happen. Alicia, ready for poll number 2?
Yes, let's do the poll number 2. So we talked about a lot of different types of attacks here. So we want to know which attack vector they've heard about today you believe possesses the greatest threats to your organizations in 2025 and probably into the next year. Is it just your standard email phishing? How about those QR code phishing or quishing attacks? Maybe it's phishing as a service kits, cloud application compromise, so losing your credentials. There's probably a lot of overlap between those things, but which ones do you think will carry the biggest risk to your organization?
As a efficacy product manager at Barracuda, like I tell the engineers all the time, it's fine if 1 or 2 spam emails make it through, but there's no way we should allow any phishing, and hence why we have multiple layers such as link protect. You have multiple layers within email gateway defense. Impersonation protection also has multiple ways of stopping phishing, and then on top of that you have SAT. But really interested to see what our customers are saying.
Yeah, let's take a look. Okay, email phishing overall, so it's almost like a catch-all.
Right.
But email phishing is definitely a big concern. Interesting to see the phishing as a service kit. So 1 in 4 of you feel that it's possesses great risk, and yeah, it helps to scale up that email phishing. So can you keep up? That's what we're going to be looking at right now. There's the pace of change is overwhelming, and oh my God, can I keep up with this? What do I do? So let's take a look at some practical solutions. Well, the one thing to keep in mind here is that pretty much every single attack that we talked about today, and we see a lot of those, have one thing in common. They're all about credential theft, and Microsoft accounts are being attacked at an unbelievable pace, 4,000 attacks per second worldwide. And I think this data is actually a couple of years old, so I wouldn't be surprised if this number almost doubled in the last couple of years. So, but just to give you an idea of how much of a scale of the attack that Microsoft accounts facing specifically. And the reason why is because email is a very easy entry point and allows this entry point to your entire organization ecosystem. Once you have access, you can compromise access to all the other collaboration tools. As an example, you can target OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams. You can get all that data, steal it, encrypt it, study it, and use it to launch further attacks, possibly using either email or other collaboration tools, and start moving laterally within the organization, getting access to more privileged types of accounts. Attacks when they happen, when accounts are compromised, and it does happen. I think our data shows that 1 in 4 organizations will have at least one of their accounts compromised every single year. And if that does happen to you, you need to move fast, and those attacks needs to be remediated fast. And the faster you act, the less risk there is to your organization. And because of the complexity of the attacks, you need to deploy this multi-layered approach to your security. And I'm sure that multi-layered security is not a new term to you, but what does it mean in terms of email? We talked a lot about the pre-delivery threat prevention detection. This is where majority of the focus is. How do I stop attacks getting in? And you should definitely invest a lot in looking at how to block attacks before they're able to reach your users' inboxes. And this is where 99.9% of the attacks will get caught and blocked and prevented. However, this is where those multi-layers starting to come in. What about that 0.1% that may get through? Like, what is your comfort threshold of how many attacks is okay for you to live with? Hopefully the answer is kind of 0. And that's where you want this post-delivery automated response. So you want to be able to identify the attacks that might have gotten through as quickly as possible, and then remediate them in an automated manner before users can interact with them. Spoofing is still a thing. So if you did not set up your DMARC policies, you should definitely look into that. Having proper email authentication is a must today. Account takeover protection, we talked about this. So ability to identify insider threats, compromised accounts, quickly lock them out, and then your users must be trained. You have to keep up with different threats, make sure that your users are aware of those different threats, and that you also understand where your weakest links are. What's your human risk is like? What can you do about it? Who needs what kind of training at what point in time? All of those things are essential to keep up with these threats. Okay, last poll question of the day. So what is your biggest challenge when it comes to managing email security? Is it lack of automation, alert fatigue, limited resources, user awareness training, keeping up with evolving threats? Maybe all of them are a challenge for you. They probably are, but I'm curious to hear which one has the biggest challenge for your organization.
Alicia, one of the things I wanted to mention on your previous section about the number of attacks we see targeting Microsoft. So that data, interestingly, is actually was published by Microsoft in their own report in 2023. So it is a bit dated. So you're absolutely right. The number has to have gone up. But it's interesting, the data is actually coming from Microsoft itself, right? It's not something that we are talking about. Microsoft is the one that shared that data.
Mm-hmm.
So very trustworthy.
All right, keeping up with evolving threats and the user awareness. I think we ran similar questions in the past, and those are the two that always at the top. How do you make sure that your users are aware, and then just keeping up with evolving tactics? So talking about the account compromise, we talked how credential theft is kind of like a number one goal for all of these attacks. And I want to give you a quick example of what account compromise with and without automation looks like from your perspective, from a perspective of IT or security analyst. So this is actually based on a real live example of one of the organizations that we worked with. There was a phishing attack delivered to employee's inbox. Employee looked at an email, clicked on the link, signed in. Attackers captured their information. They were able to access Microsoft 365. They've accessed it from an unusual location in the device, and attacker then went ahead and created some inbox rules. We see a lot of those. So we've captured all of that data, and what we did was we have alerted the admin of the attack. So the admin was alerted. They got those suspicious activities were triggered the alert, and then, unsurprisingly, a very overstretched IT administrator overlooked that critical alert. They didn't pay attention. And then days later, attacker was still inside the environment. They were sending phishing campaigns to suppliers and customers, and days passed, and then finally, the IT administrator noticed something that was wrong. They worked with the support to disable the account, to remediate, and it was all fine at the end. However, you can see that some damage was done, and it could have been worse. So let's take a look at another example where similar thing happens, but you have automation in place. And then in this particular case, customer used a combination of our email protection to detect account takeover, to help them prevent those phishing attacks that might lead to account takeovers, and then the XDR cloud security to help automate the remediation part. So all the same thing. Phishing attack comes in, user clicks on the link, credentials are compromised, and then finally, once that alert is triggered, the managed XDR cloud security just automatically goes ahead based on all of those anomalies, suspends the accounts and attacker is blocked. So, you don't need to worry about what's going to happen at 2 o'clock in the morning when you might not have a coverage of the IT and the security teams, because we would be able to, with automation, we'd be able to kind of reduce that response from days to what you see is basically seconds. So what does Barracuda email protection looks like overall? So how does this all fit together? At the foundation, we use a combination of threat intelligence that Barracuda has, and Barracuda's threat intelligence is not just limited to email data. With Barracuda, we have application security, web security, network security, data security. So there's a lot of threats that we see that don't just come through the email. And we aggregate all of those threats into a Barracuda threat platform, and we share that information out to all of our products and solutions, so all the customers can benefit from the wealth of threat intelligence that we have. And then on top of that, we have a Barracuda AI that uses behavioral analysis, looks at the various anomalies to detect unusual behaviors. We also use multimodal AI and built-in automation and remediation that I talked about. So that's necessary to detect those hard to identify attacks. We have different application of these technologies and detection tools. We will protect your data from data protection, backing up, helping you to recover, staying compliant, protecting access. We talked a lot about access today, whether that's account takeover, identity protection, remediating those attacks, helping you to recover through Entra ID backup. And then finally, people. A lot of you said, well, one of my biggest gaps or weakest links are my people in user awareness. Well, we help with security awareness training and phishing simulation type of attacks, human risk management, as well as providing tools necessary for your users to report emails, and then for you to quickly uncover and automate that remediation of all of the emails. And then at the end, we making sure that all of this is very easy for you, very accessible, providing as much visibility and control as we can for you. We have an email log, for example, that collects all of the emails that have been sent to and from your environment. So you can review all of those messages and see any patterns, release from quarantine, remediate something that might have gotten through. Our AI has built-in data that helps you understand why certain decisions were made, why are AI models blocked an attack. And we also provide a lot of automation for post-delivery remediation. This is one of our key investment points to help our customers to automate as much of post-delivery remediation process as we can, so that you can pull those emails out as quickly as possible. And all of that is kind of backed up and built on the foundation of XDR and 24/7 SOC and that BarracudaONE platform. All our customers have access to BarracudaONE. They unifies all of the different tools across Barracuda, so that you have a full visibility and control across your entire security posture. Finally, if you want to get started today, I encourage you to try our email threat scanner. All you need is your Microsoft 365 admin credentials. The way it works is you go in, register And we will allow, and that will gives us a permission to scan your users' inboxes going back around 6 months or so, looking for different threats that already sit inside your environment. It's completely free to use. It's really, it's about 3 minutes setup. There is no strings attached whatsoever. So it will just help you to identify the gaps, the type of attacks that are being missed by your current security, see what value Barracuda can bring you. So check it out. It's you can find this on the website. I'm sure you will have a link to this on the post-webinar email. You can use it completely by yourself, completely self-service if you need to, or you can reach out to us and we'll help you with this as well. All right, so I think this is the end of our webinar. I want to see if there is any questions. Let's take a look at a couple of questions. Please type them into QA box. Perv and I can be here for another few minutes to answer any questions you may have.
Lucia, there's a question about how do I know that all of the layers in Barracuda are turned on and working for me? You talked about BarracudaONE. Maybe kind of elaborate on that a little bit more.
Sure. So if you're already a Barracuda customer, you will have access to BarracudaONE. And one of the capabilities of BarracudaONE is to provide you visibility into what type of products and solutions you have with Barracuda and which ones you don't. And those that you do have, are they configured and set up properly? So if you go to BarracudaONE dashboard, you will be able to see that overview and then follow instructions. If you have something and it hasn't been configured properly, you will get an alert. You will see an alert associated with it, and you can just follow the direction instructions of how to configure it properly. We see misconfiguration being one of the biggest reasons why attacks get through. So it's always a good thing to go and double check whether or not you have your security set up properly and configured properly.
Awesome. How does Barracuda email protection work with Google? I assume they mean Google Workspace. You want to take that one on?
Sure. So we have Google Workspace. It will become available just in the next few weeks. Right now we have a Microsoft 365 up and running, and it's been running for a few years. And now our Google Workspace is available for some early access customers. So if you are interested in trialing this out, you can.
Awesome. I think this is the last one. What's the best way to stay on top of the latest threats? So we talked a lot about the examples. I think like how do our customers and prospects access research by Barracuda?
So probably the best place is to sign up to a blog. We publish our latest research on a blog. We have different types of research. We have a threat analyst spotlights that threat analysts all of the attacks that they are seeing. They're diving into it and then digesting that and breaking it up, and writing up the research on the blogs. We also do a lot of just the threat spotlights, like a threat that we've never seen before, and we're diving into what does that mean. Prab and I also every year we partner up and we work on our email threat report, which we will be probably working on very soon. At the end of each year, we do that, and we look back in the last 12 months about different trends and threats that we are seeing, and publish a report summarizing all the interesting data points and examples that we find.
We also launched Barracuda Insights, right? I think that's another amazing
Yeah.
resource.
Yeah, for sure. Barracuda research is also available on our website. Yes.
Awesome. That's the end of all the questions that we had. Great questions, though.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks to everybody who attended. We appreciate your attendance and your participation in the webinar and your wonderful questions. And a very special thank you to both you, Alessi and Prep, for your wonderful presentation. Just a reminder to all of our attendees, you will receive a copy of this recording along with some important resources in an email from me either later today or first thing tomorrow morning. All right, thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you next time.